Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Rondi Lambeth, thank you so much for joining us on the Mike Litton Experience, bud. It's been a long time since we've seen each other. And I remember vividly back in 2011 when you had me as a guest on your show. And that actually lit a fire in me. I remember chasing you out to the parking lot and asking you if we could get on tomorrow. And you're like, I'm a little full, but if I have a vacancy, I'll let you know, right? Kind of like, back off, big boy, kind of thing. But man, that was so cool. That was down at the KPRZ studios. And I ended up full circle a couple of years later. I ended up with a show, the Mike Litton Show on KCBQ in those same studios. So crazy how life works. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I really, really appreciate your time. As we talked about a minute ago, everyone has a story and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born and then go all the way through your life story, if that's okay, all the way up to today.
I don't know that we have that much time, but let's.
Well, we'll enjoy it however much time we have.
Okay. All right. Well, I was born about 3.5 hours away from my home in Boise, Idaho. So I live in Boise, Idaho, but I was born in John Day, Oregon, which is about 3.5 hours away.
Okay.
And for some reason, I always told everybody I was from Oregon. And it wasn't until about 2 years ago, I realized like I was born in Oregon, but I'm not from Oregon. Like I'm an Idahoan at heart. I'm a libertarian, and Idaho is a libertarian state. And, rules are just there for the average folk, not everybody.
I got you.
And like one of the things in Idaho, when one of the libertarian laws that we have is if you pass a vehicle on the highway or on the freeway, you can actually go up to 15 miles over the speed limit in an attempt to get around the car faster because it's safer. So we can literally do 95 miles an hour on our freeways throughout Idaho. Legally do 95 without getting it's legal, so you don't get tickets. So I grew up in mainly in Idaho. My mom was a teenage mom, and my dad actually got drafted by Green Bay Packers. This was in the 70s, so I was born in 71, and he was supposed to go play. While his friends were getting drafted to go to Vietnam, he got drafted to play for Green Bay Packers out of high school, and was supposed to go play as a linebacker. And, he decided he was going to go party, like any high school kid. And he robbed a liquor store and got caught and found himself in jail. So he got a choice. Either, my mom's at home pregnant, and they gave him a choice. You can either join the Marine Corps or go to jail. So he joined the Marine Corps and went off to overseas.
What a choice.
Yeah. What a choice, right? So his life has been pretty much just one bad decision after the next.
Yeah.
And somehow, I'm not sure how this happened, but my mom was pregnant within a few weeks of having me. So when I was 10 months old, I had my first little brother, and I'm the oldest now of 13 kids that I know. There are others, but I don't know them. So I don't say that I have more because I don't know exactly how many.
I got you.
But my dad was very frugal.
Good size clan.
So I grew up there, and then by the time I was 6 years old, I had 2 more brothers. So there's 4 of us in and out of foster care. My dad would show up every once in a while, get drunk, beat up my mom. We'd move out in the middle of the night, and this thing went on for most of my childhood.
Wow. Sorry, man.
In women's shelters and food stamps. And one day we were walking home because we have a car.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you knew this, Mike, but I just learned this a few months ago, maybe a year ago, but it's very, very recent that I learned this. Until 1977, women were not allowed to be to have a legal binding contract by themselves. So women could not have a checking account, women couldn't have a credit card, women couldn't buy a car, women couldn't get a loan, they couldn't even sign a lease on an apartment.
No, I did. This is all news to me.
Up until 1977.
Oh my goodness.
So, I was fairly hard on my mom when I was a kid, and as an adult. What I mean by hard was like the decisions that she made.
Yeah.
And as I got older, I started realizing, she was 17 years old when she had me. And she wasn't, how do I say this? She died recently. So I'm trying to,
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, she wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed, if you will. Like, beautiful woman, very, very friendly and loving, but was definitely not as mature as her age. That's a good way. So at 17, when she had me, she was just a kid having kids. So I put that on my mom. Like, why does she, move us around so much? And why did she always call my dad back? And why does she have the other men in her life? And so I was hard on her that way. And then I realized I was doing a podcast and I was doing some research and found that until 1977, women could not go out and do all this stuff on their own.
Wow.
And so that made me soften up a little bit, understand like why we had to depend on the government, why we had to do these things. So one day we're walking home. This is really when the life changes. One day we're walking home alongside the highway. We're hitchhiking. So it's my mom with 4 boys, and all of us were carrying bags of groceries. And it was around the first of the month because we got our funny money food stamps back when they were actually food stamps. I don't know if you remember seeing those, but
I do. I used to work at a grocery store where we cash those in.
Exactly. You go in, you take your $1 in, and you buy a piece of gum, a nickel gum or something, and then you get cash, and you can buy beer and cigarettes with cash.
Yeah.
Or whatever else you want to buy. Remember the food, like you couldn't buy any food in the grocery store. There was only the government food you could buy.
Right.
I remember the Kick cereal, which was just nasty.
Government cheese. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember all that.
So we're walking home, and this guy pulls up because we're hitchhiking because we have a car. And I know it's around the first of the month because we just went grocery shopping. And we're walking home. This guy pulls up and asks us if we want to ride. We're like, sure, let's go. Well, he was driving a horse and wagon, not a car. So all 4 of us 4 boys climb up on this wagon. There's dogs up there, and these are cattle dogs. These are not like, I got my dog laying next to me, that my golden doodle, not those kind of dogs, like dogs that live out with the cows and roll around in cow poop. And so us 4 boys climb on. My mom gets up front, and it's we're just going down the road on this horse and wagon. And next thing I know, we're moving out of our Section 8 house that had running water and electricity, and we're moving into a shack that has no running water, has no electricity. Paul, unbeknownst to me, that was the guy that picked her up, was in his 50s. My mom was 31 or so. So he's 27 years older than her. Very violent man. Had spent time in the mental hospital because someone was, he owned this huge ranch up in Washington, and someone kept breaking into his tack shed and stealing stuff out of his barn, essentially. So one night he sat up in the rafters with the 30-06 and waited for the guy to walk in, and then shot and killed the dude. And then claimed insanity, went to prison for a while. But this guy was crazy, like legitimately crazy. And so we were in and out of Oregon and Idaho, spent most of the time in Idaho, mainly the mountains, because the Russians were coming. The Russians were going to invade at any day, overtake our government. And, we were learning that rich people were bad, money was evil, education was stupid, because the end of the world is coming. And in fact, you remember Ruby Ridge?
Yeah.
Those were our family friends. We were literally at their house the week before the FBI went in and raided and killed them.
Oh my
the
gosh.
week before. So that's the kind of people that I grew up around, the crazies. So at 15 years old, because I got tired of being beaten up, and Paul would beat us up on a regular basis. He would torture us. He would kill our animals in front of us and make us eat them, and just psycho things. Wow. So at 15, I'm like, I'm eating out of a dumpster. I have no running water. I have no electricity. I'm getting beat up all the time. I'm just out of here. And so I left. I left home at 15. I bounced around on some couches for a while, and then eventually ended up in John Day, Oregon, where I was born. Right. And how I ended up there was my mom's dad was up there. He invited me to come up there and stay with him. Unbeknownst to me, when I got there, I was not welcome because he was in the middle of the divorce and was living with his girlfriend, and he was drunk when he invited me to come stay with him. So now I'm somewhere I don't know anybody. Wow. So I figured it out. I got a place to stay and I got a job. And this job is probably one of the biggest impacts of my life on helping me understand money and credit and taxes. It's the first time I learned about taxes and income tax. I'm 15 years old. Yeah. And I went to work for this guy named Wally Williams. And one of the things that Wally was, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep that makes the difference. Yeah. And now that I've been in this financial industry for 16 years, and I've seen hundreds of thousands of credit reports, and we work daily with celebrities and athletes and entrepreneurs, people that are literally making millions of dollars a month. And if I said their names, you would know exactly who they are. And I see behind the scenes, I see all of the skeletons in the closet. And Wally was right. The most important thing is how much money you keep. And so for the last, I'm now 51, I'll be 52 next month. So the last 37 years, I have really studied credit, taxes, insurance, real estate investing, those kind of things. It was kind of weird in high school. I would do that. But so I went to work for Wally, and this is when my education really started. One day, my job there is to wash his cars. Wash his cars and take his wife a bag of cash on Friday. Literally a little envelope baggie full of cash. Wow. $2,000 a week. I was earning $2.35 an hour washing cars. Just to give you an idea of $2,000 for me was a lot of money. No kidding. And so I would literally drive up to her house and give her an envelope with $2,000 cash in it. And it was always labeled as petty cash or office cash. So one day I just dropped off the cash, came back, had to wash her car and fill it up with gas and all that stuff. And Wally said, hey, I can't remember the dude's name. He's like, he quit, he can't handle it anymore. And I want to know if you want a job. I'm like, yes. Like, I didn't know what it was. Yes. He goes, I'll pay $1,000 a month. I'm like, yes, please. Like that's a lot of money for me. I'm in high school. This is in the 80s. Yeah. Yes, I will take a raise. So he's like, well, you need to understand whatever you see here at work, you can't tell anybody about it. Like nobody. And I'm like, look, I can keep my mouth shut. One of the ways I'm still alive is I know how to keep my mouth shut, because if I would have been talking, my stepdad would have beaten me to death. Right. So I'm like, I can keep my mouth shut. So he's like, all right, come with me. We're walking down this hallway at the office. We get to the end of the door and he turns around and looks at me. And he says, are you sure you want this? I'm like, yes. He's like, are you sure you can go and never tell anybody what you see here? I'm like, yes. Like, give me the money, like whatever it takes. Just tell me where to dig the hole, kind of thing. So we open the door, Mike. Right. And I walk into this really cold room, and there's a dude laying on a table, butt-ass naked, with a bullet hole in his face. And that was the day that I went to work as a funeral director. And I spent the next 3 years in high school as a funeral director. Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And I started learning a lot about people, how they react. Yeah. I see all the good and the bad. And fast forward, I did that for 3 years, all through high school. And then I decided that I was on this one call, and this fire department shows up, and, you know, the husband and wife, they're already dead, but the fire department shows up, and they looked really cool. So I'm like, I want to be a fireman. So I put in my notice. I left John Day, Oregon, moved to Denver, Colorado, because they're building this brand new airport called DIA, and there's lots of jobs. So I went there, got accepted to the fire academy, become a fireman, and went to work for Littleton Fire. So you can see my Littleton Fire Department helmet back there on my studio wall.
Yeah.
And I become a firefighter, and life was good. By the time I was 21, I had 3 kids because I followed in my mom and dad's footsteps, not on purpose, but it ended up happening that way. Got into the fire department, and life was good. Got fireman of the year. I mean, life was really good. And then Columbine High School shooting went down. I was a first responder there, and things started changing for me a little bit. And then in 2006, my mom starts calling me constantly. And at this point, I had no relationship with my mom at all.
Right.
And she keeps leaving me all these voicemails. So I'm at the fire station. I'm not going to call her back. So I call her back, and she's like, Zeke had an accident at work, and Zeke's my little brother. So, and I figured he's the little brother that was like a year old, 18 months old when I left, when I was 15. And I've always had a lot of guilt for leaving, because I'm the oldest, and as the oldest, you just kind of have this guilt. So I left home, and he was also a firefighter. He wanted to be like me. And my dad was a firefighter. My grandpa on my mom's side retired as fire chief in Boise.
Wow.
So, and I didn't know this when I wanted to become a firefighter, because when you're beaten as a kid and starving, you don't think about like, oh, I'm going to have a Ferrari when I'm an adult. I'm going to have this house and these kids. You think.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.